Hello everyone, Pastor Scott here. In recent history here at Underwood, we've been talking a lot about cross-generational ministry. Many of you have heard that we have a committee who is working on ideas to influence or to introduce the notion of cross-generational ministry here within our congregation. We talked about it in worship, we've talked about it in some different situations, but we find ourselves wondering if you know exactly what we're talking about when we say cross-generational ministry. What does it mean? What doesn't it mean? Is it a new program? Is it a new idea? What is it? And these are all important questions and great questions that we should be talking about. When I think about cross-generational ministry, I think about the notion of those people who came before that influenced me, that influenced my life of faith. And if I was to think about three people come to mind for me. The first one is a man named Charlie. Charlie was my sixth grade Sunday school teacher, the only male Sunday school teacher that I had during my time of growing up. And he stands out in my memory. Charlie was a man that was wonderful to everyone he met. He was one of those stalwarts of the congregation and the community where I grew up, and he influenced me. I think of him as well, knowing that recently he died. And as I think about him and his memory, or my memories of him, it's always important. The second person is a woman named Barb. Now, Barb was the mother of one of my close friends growing up. She was also my seventh grade confirmation teacher. And even now today, is still a very active person that I run into at synod events. And she has continued to influence me. Her example has been important, and her support for me as a pastor has been important. And not only as a pastor, but just in my growing life of faith over the course of my life. The final person that I think of is a man named Jeff. Now, Jeff originated here within our congregation at Underwood. He is a hometown boy here at Underwood. But Jeff gave me my job at a Bible camp, not once, but twice, and was influential in inviting me when I didn't know what to think about this whole faith thing, and just allowing me to engage with people, to learn from them, to talk with them, to engage with them. And without his influence and invitation, I wouldn't be sitting here today. So those are just three people who influenced me in my life of faith and brought me to this point. I'm sure that you have people in your lives as you look back that have influenced your faith as well. And that great cloud of witnesses that we hear about in the book of Hebrews that help to shape us. And this raises the question then, who can you influence? Who can you be that person for? As we look to the generations that come after us, who are those people that you look at and you think, I hope that in their life they come to faith, they understand faith, that they are shaped by it. And then we raise the question of how can we become involved in their lives. Now, when I think about all this, it stems from a short reading from the book of Deuteronomy as Moses is addressing the people of Israel, and he's talking to them about the instructions that God has given, the way that they should live their lives together. And from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 6 through 9, we hear Moses say, "Keep these words that I am commanding you today in your heart. Recite them to your children and talk about them when you are at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you rise. Bind them as a sign on your hand. Fix them as an emblem on your forehead and write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates." The notion behind this is that make things visible so that when the next generation asks the question, what do these things mean? We share the stories. The wonderful thing about our life of faith is that it's story. We share our story. We invite someone to experience that which we have seen. Now, will their experience be different? Absolutely. But the wonderful thing about this that we realize is that God's invitation for us to join in this work of faith, this work of reconciliation of the world, whatever you want to call it, we realize that through our life of faith, our story becomes part of God's overarching story of what God is up to in the world. And that's what we're doing. We're sharing our stories. We're sharing our experience. We're recognizing that my experience is different than yours, And neither one is better or worse. They're simply different. So how can we learn from one another? And when we think about the notion of intergenerational or cross-generational, whatever you want to call it, we could think of combining the wisdom of the elder, the experience that they have garnered, and partnering that with the wonder of a child, how they see and interpret and understand things just with a sense of wonder. And how can we learn from one another and at the same time learn with one another and join together in that life of faith, recognizing that all of this stuff that we are doing as a congregation, as a community of faith, in many ways, we're already doing this. So how can we begin to see that, recognize it, and continue to enhance it as we move into the future? This is some of the stuff that we as the committee are talking about. We're trying to find ways to communicate that with you, the congregation. We hope to continue to do that in the future, perhaps through individual conversations, perhaps through moments within worship, temple talks, things of that nature, but also just calling out things that we see where intergenerational ministry, intergenerational activity is already happening. If you have thoughts or questions about this, by all means, get a hold of either myself or some of the other committee members. Those names are available on our website. You can find that. And we'll continue to have these conversations. We'll continue to move forward, recognizing that our story together is joining with God's story. I hope that is helpful to give you a little bit of insight into what we're talking about, and I look forward to talking with you more.